If you are a homeowner, you might know that being a homeowner isn't easy. I frequently have to deal with solicitors knocking on my door, attempting to convert me into one of their own. I proved that I was strong and independent and didn't need to be a zombie in order to be a degenerate street urchin. It is entirely helpful as a homeowner to own a set of tools. I was still without a wrench, a monkey with no purpose. I possessed no trade skills, and there were no trade schools for me to attend because everybody was too busy trying to rip my guts open. My aggressive actions caught the attention of 50,000 zomboids within the area. They took advantage of the unfair situation that was weighed against me. The zombies could eat me, but I couldn't eat them. It's honestly impressive that my hand doesn't get tired from mashing everybody's face into a potato salad. My club skill was sitting comfortably at 22. While that is considered to be fairly low level, it is high enough to enjoy the bonuses to damage and swing speed. My combat prowess was on the same level as a toddler during nap time. And while on the subject of nap time, my new home had granted me an opportunity to start increasing my vitality. This began boosting my maximum health. Getting slapped in the mouth would still starve me to death, however, but I had been granted the power of lightning and thunder, and I abused these powers maliciously on this majestic buck. I would be eating good tonight. After gently annihilating a small family of deer, I returned to the gift shop because surely a gift shop would have gifts. But it also had a restaurant. Killing that family of deer might have been gratuitous. I don't think I will be featured in any Disney films with plots adjacent to Bambi. This lumberjack had a desire to chop my head off, but irony dictated that he would die by a wooden spike trap. There was no kitchen sink for me to search in this kitchen, which exacerbated my depression and proclivity for violence. I had tried very hard to not have to spend 20 entire iron bars to craft a basic scrapping tool, but I would truly have to swallow my pride in order to progress. This bear was probably a pagan idol of devil worship, but it was also the final tier 3 decoration piece I needed. I deeply contemplated the actions I had taken in these long 8 days. I do not regret most of my decisions, but there are a few changes I think I would make were I to do this run again. One thing I would definitely change is getting some damn upgraded tools, because as it turns out, using stone to chip away at iron is laughably inefficient. Scrap tools, which is a tier above stone tools, is roughly twice the damage of stone tools, maybe less, which still isn't great. But getting scrap tools is only a minor inconvenience, but it is a bargain well struck when you consider how much of your precious time is saved using them. I needed to meet a self inflicted quota. Each piece of iron would net me 100 grams of iron in the forge. 1,000 grams would net me a singular iron bar. I needed 20 iron bars for the wrench, so I set out to mine 200 iron rocks. A biker introduced himself as a huge fan of my work. I autographed my signature into his entire existence. As I exhausted all of my food and water into chipping at rocks with another rock, the spirits of the forest whispered secrets into my brain. I would soon unlock the ability to craft a rare, esoteric substance called bronze. This required me to barbecue copper and tin inside of the forge for several minutes. The forge uses a heat system. Certain rocks require certain temperatures to properly smelt. Wood gives you the lowest temperature, and it is the worst, and doesn't smelt for anything. And for God's sakes, don't put a wooden log in your forge, otherwise you will be stuck burning the worst fuel for a solid 30 minutes. Charcoal gives a heat level of 2, which is good enough to be disappointing. You can smelt copper and tin with charcoal. Iron required a heat level of 3, which you can get from burning coal. I would accept nothing less than coal since I had mined a healthy supply of the stuff already. I stared directly at the sun and noticed it was getting close to nighttime. I spent the rest of the day committing crime sprees against a deceased federal government by pilfering mailboxes. I simply cannot afford the tuition of a university. The key to my success would be plagiarism. It is not enough to simply unlock the ability to create new weapons and tools. Each book will increase the crafting quality of a weapon or tool, but if the quality is too low, you will not be able to repair it. I may not be smarter than a fifth grader, but I know it is a generally good idea to wait until you can craft something good enough to be able to repair it 3 or 4 times. I spent the night dematerializing all my special rocks and molded them into powerful metals. Earlier, I squeezed some Elmer's glue onto some cloth and created an incredibly useful material called a duct tape. I tediously wrapped duct tape around a pile of iron bars and sprinkled some mechanical parts on top of it. The creation of my wrench had started. I then grabbed more Elmer's glue and glazed it over some bronze, wood, and deerskin to barely craft a bronze warhammer. I was officially in the Bronze Age. Now, you might think this is clearly a bronze mace, but my brain has assured me that this is definitely a warhammer. I started my day by warhammering this party girl. The desired result was achieved in a very decent amount of time. I needed to be absolutely sure that the warhammer worked as intended, and so I began a process of total annihilation. The bronze warhammer was definitely an improvement. The zombies were still on the tanky side, and I wouldn't be going toe to toe with ferals anytime soon, but I was given sufficient power to raid bigger and better POIs more comfortably. I committed to memory the location of a few cement mixers scattered throughout the world. Since I was now in the possession of extremely basic tools, I would be able to massacre cement mixers for their forged iron. Salvaging iron is very useful in this mod because mining and smelting iron in bulk is much more difficult compared to the base game. I needed to get my salvaging skill as close to level 10 as possible. Most action skills before level 10 suffer penalties in harvest count, harvest speed, and stamina usage. Salvaging cement mixers at level 1 would be a waste. I drunkenly drove straight into this truck and began the process of total destruction upon it. This was Hogzilla Ranch, and there just so happened to be a cement mixer in here. This also happened to be a solid source of books, and I proceeded to raid the first half of the pig factory. I needed to wash my hands in some toilet water, when suddenly I came upon a most valuable possession, the Beretta M92. I finally had some real firepower. If I ever got cornered, I had a true panic weapon that I could rely on, except I had no ammunition on me. So basically, this gun was just a useless hunk of metal. I encountered significant resistance in the next room. The zombies gave me a stern talking to regarding my intrusion. I committed war crimes and continued my invasion. Today was truly a good day. I felt like a monkey, a proud monkey that could stand on both its legs. My curved spine had straightened up, and I could stand tall in a world that wanted to bring me down. But the world had just one more message, a message of spite and mockery. The world had decided to give me a completely free wrench. Isn't that just great? Isn't that just wonderful? Thank you. Thank you so much. It was only after I spent a day mining at a glacial pace, smelting in suboptimal conditions, to craft the thing I desired most, and the world just throws a wrench at me. I get it, world. I get it. You hate me. You want the zombies to succeed, but I too am spiteful. I will continue inhabiting a world that is uninhabitable just to get back at you. Okay, look, I'm only half kidding. I only had about one or two repairs left on my wrench anyway before, destroying it. Having a backup wrench still saves me a great deal of material and time. Without wrenching the cement mixer, I made a return to base. I retrieved some of the 9mm ammunition and crafted a scrap pickaxe. I returned to the world that hated me. Gas pumps are an excellent source of iron and steel. Just like in vanilla, it is wise to salvage these when you can, because it would be a long time before I could craft steel. I didn't concern myself with the enormous amount of fuel that I was wasting, because it would be a while before I could craft a mini bike, plus fuel is incredibly common. But I did find a vehicle magazine in this loot box, and the world kindly reminded me that I was actually just 2 points away from unlocking the mini bike. I still don't regret my decision. This gas station was a tier 4, and there is a non zero chance of a feral biker spawning down here. But my greed drove my ambition to wrench this cement mixer, and I kindly got the hell out of there. The world kept acting very cute by giving me another vehicle magazine. It spoke to me and said, "Gosh, I sure hope there's no fuel shortage. Good luck on your mini bike." I ignored the possible consequences of my actions. The very first time I played Afterlife, this house was the very first place I stayed at. And the house taught me that wood plays a significant role in not slowing down the zombies trying to eat you. I was firmly put into a situation where I fell beneath the floor into a pit. But this zombie was literally too stupid to attack me during a very vulnerable moment for me. It took me a minute to notice, but this house does have a clear design philosophy. It really plays on my insecurities, from falling into a pit to engaging in hand-to-hand combat in a very small attic. I was gifted a sham chowder and the final book I needed to unlock the mini bike. This zombie soldier caught my attention. I normally don't see soldiers unless they're from the downtown areas. The zombies in this mod do wander around the entire map, so he's not entirely out of place. I cleared the area because I wanted to see if I could take on a soldier. The soldier sprinted at me at an extremely alarming pace. He was apparently an elite soldier because that was a damn feral and I left forever never to return. I continued raiding tier 2 houses throughout the day. The only notable piece of loot was this batter up book I found that gave me 10% extra damage to clubs, which was very welcomed. I could develop and research perk books in the research desk, but each book costs a whopping 10 literature fragments. I don't really like to craft perk books straight away because I want to try and find them first and craft the ones I don't find. I needed to return to the pig factory because the pigs were in possession of a cement mixer. I used wood logs to nerd pull straight to the end loot room. I needed to be very stealthy because Grace was here, and my inventory was weighing me down. Grace would end my life if she even glanced at me. I stealthily slammed my wrench into the cement mixer, and it made the loudest possible noise after it disintegrated. Stealth is kind of funny in this game. I can make the most obnoxious noises and nothing will happen, but if I cross a line or activate a trigger, the entire world collapses around me. I knew I was truly living in a megacity when I found a second trader compound. I introduced myself to the local blacksmith and asked if he could inspect my warhammer for damage. The forge had teeth marks all over it, but the anvil was in an incredible condition. I didn't even know you could find an anvil in this mod, but I just circumvented a large amount of progression just by getting this. My knees greatly appreciated the weight. Forges can also be broken down for iron ingots. I managed to get 13 out of it, which is not bad. I showed my appreciation for my knees and back by running as fast as possible while carrying this weight. I only got one Forge Ahead magazines from these crates, but nothing remarkable was found. Oh, and of course, some Shiraz. Trader compounds are great sources of alcohol, and we all know these traders are some real degenerate drunkards. I broke and entered into Moe's grocery for the cement mixer. The zombies once again protested my intrusion, but I protested their existence. The loot chest gave me a pair of some really bad steel boots. However, the thing about steel armor is that it is steel armor. It's really the only type of armor in the game that gives you a decent armor rating. For all of the game, I've had maybe less than 10 armor rating. This is why I'm easily spooked when I encounter zombies on insane difficulty. I feel bad for complaining earlier about spending resources on a wrench, because wrenches truly pay for themselves. And because I spent those 20 iron ingots on a wrench, I would return home with a much greater quantity of iron. It was time to make a workbench. I'm sure I don't need to say this, but the workbench is the single most impactful workstation you can make. The reason I was scrapping all those gun magazines was because all guns are locked behind a workbench, and now I'll have the means to craft them. And just like in the base game, you can craft ammunition in a workbench. My existence became happy at the prospect of stuffing gunpowder into a brass casing and making zombie heads explode. I was on the path to becoming a military powerhouse, as long as I didn't shoot myself in the foot. I never bothered with pipe weapons because they are impressively awful, and ammunition is so rare anyway. This was perhaps by far the best day I've had for progression. Maybe the world doesn't hate me, maybe tomorrow I would continue to take more steps towards progression. There was a very small battalion of zombies inside and outside of my home. I gradually improved my baseball batting skills against the constant stream of zombie horde. I want to make myself a bit clear. I am not against the incredibly high volume of zombies constantly chewing on my home. In fact, I actually prefer the world to be populated because it makes the world feel alive. The high difficulty does add a certain level of tediousness to it, but on difficulties like No Matter Warrior, it's completely manageable. Last night, I made sacrifices to the gods and summoned a workbench. The floodgates had been opened. I now had the means to create a great deal of technology and weaponry. I began plugging holes into my base because I needed the zombies to path directly into my traps. I don't need them to be thinking independently now. Today was going to be book hunting day. I needed to step up my research and or development strategy. I needed a baseball bat, but I simply don't know how you carve out a baseball bat from a piece of wood. I wouldn't learn until later that baseball bats are actually made out of several iron ingots. Being downtown makes me very slightly uncomfortable. My target was going to be the public library because I like reading. The fun thing about downtown area is that they have their own special way of spawning zombies. There are ferals just running around, and they are measurably stronger and more terrifying than regular zombies. It still took me a significant amount of hits to kill even just a basic regular zombie. Using cheese tactics against a feral was simply non-negotiable. The quality of my life took a dive when I discovered that this tourist was also a feral. I applied critical thinking to the situation and baited the tourist away from the library. This tourist will do a healthy base damage of 100 health on this difficulty, and I would be eating a great majority of that damage since my armor rating is basically non-existent. The public library is also a viable alternative to the Crack-a-Book if you don't mind the ambient ferals running around outside. My janitorial services came in handy, and I cleaned the area up of all these obnoxious books. I had combed about half the compound when my antics attracted the attention of a squad of flesh eaters. I didn't want to play the game of Who's the Feral, so I made an early exit. I would take my services elsewhere for the time being. I returned to the first trader compound and initiated combat with the local blacksmith. Wrenching forges saves me 20 minutes of my life bashing at metal rocks. I was more than happy to vandalize this workstation. I made the executive decision to poke my head inside a custom-made point of interest, and what I found most interesting was the high volume of zombies inside such a small space. I've made great strides in my ability to resolve conflicts, but I still wasn't where I wanted to be, and that is why I needed the baseball bat. I returned home with several heaping tablespoons of fragments and iron. I mashed every single piece of literature into club magazines and placed a perk point into Meticulous, a perk that increases the quality of crafted items. I played tic-tac-toe inside of my head as I waited for my magazines to bake into a well-done book pile. I wanted to craft the highest quality bat as soon as possible. I caused a great deal of stress in the bird community by stealing eggs from their nests because I was literally starving to death again. And yes, I completely forgot to loot this place when I first moved in. I'm happy to report that the loot was completely insulting to my existence. I've never wanted a stone shovel in my life, but I did find some decent padded armor, the first chest piece that gave me any kind of armor rating. As the lone survivor of the world, I inducted myself into the Baseball Hall of Fame when I converted atoms into a baseball bat. And yes, now we're starting to feel good. After creating a set of scrap iron tools, I conducted a survey on the zombies using a significant sample pool. Oh god, it's nighttime. I'm getting the hell out of here. Since I was becoming a civilizing force in the apocalypse, I thought it was time to put an actual door in front of my residence. And I concluded the day by strategically cowering in the attic. I awoke and decided that I should try and explore more of the new custom POIs. I wasn't sure if my baseball bat was working properly, so I tested it out on some dead college students. I was treated to a clown show where the zombies played a game called Who is the Dumbest Zombie? Deciding on a winner was challenging. Arlene made a compelling case for herself when she stuck her face within striking distance of my baseball bat. My mediocre archery skills brought the party girl down, and the show was brought to its natural conclusion. Aside from a handful of magazines and liquor, there wasn't any crazy loot here. This seemed to be a tier 0 POI. This wheel reminded me that I needed to craft my mini bike. I was on my way home when I noticed a drastic change in my vision. At first, I thought I was terminally stupid and my idiocy was in the beginning stages of killing me to death. But I realized that this was the infamous Z virus. I was infected. I was infected to a point where my body and mind was undergoing changes. This is it. This is the thing that killed the world. I was becoming the thing I hated most. I thought, if I turn into a zombie, would the other zombies forgive me for killing thousands upon thousands of them? But then I also thought that maybe I was the zombie the whole time, and the people I killed were just ordinary people that were simply trying to contain me. I broke into my stash of glowing mushrooms and mashed them into Sifia paste. I took the sticky paste and dissolved it into Manuka honey and set it on fire. This would produce a medicine called Sifia syrup, an easy and affordable way to handle the Z virus. I only needed to drink a few jars and my vision cleared up shortly thereafter. My monkey brain decided it was time to create a mini bike. And while I am crafting it, I do want to say a few words about the Z virus mechanic. The virus is easy to manage. Not much time is needed to commit to managing the virus. It progresses very slowly. I'm on day 10 or 11 in this footage on a 2-hour day cycle, and it was only at this moment I began to notice the effect. This was plenty of time for me to establish myself in the apocalypse, and I had plenty of medicine on hand to deal with it. I've never had to commit a large amount of time to managing the virus. Antibiotics will be acquired naturally during raids. It's just part of the immersive experience of dying to death. I'm also not entirely sure what happens when the virus reaches 100%. I've only heard that you are turned, and it does kill you, but I believe you can continue playing after you've turned. It's probably not ideal to let the virus kill you on a permadeath playthrough. I casually ripped this engine out of a truck and carried it with both of my hands back to base, and the creation process of the mini bike had began. To properly gas my mini bike, I needed to tape together some polymer to create a siphon. This item needed to stay in my inventory for me to siphon fuel out of cars. These zombies displayed undesirable behavior, and I reprimanded them. And then I proceeded to steal gas from hardworking Americans. I had the option to drink this jar of gasoline, and while I am absolutely dumb enough to drink gasoline, I was barely smart enough to know that I needed to pour this stuff into my mini bike. The bike was planted, and my intoxicated brain elected to make the journey to the desert. The entrance was guarded by literally 50 zombies, but that didn't matter because I was in the age of the motorized bicycle. The desert made it abundantly clear that it was still daytime. There are a few details about the desert that can complicate a casual journey. The game stage was significantly increased, to a point that would guarantee an encounter with a feral inside of a POI. The first zombie in this house was literally a feral. Terror filled my brain. The loot was also significantly increased in the desert biome, but I wasn't entirely motivated to try my hand at taking down several ferals. I found this jerry can earlier which rendered my siphon completely useless. And that damn feral that was in that house was still trying to hunt me down. Ferals are just as stupid as regulars, and you can throw rocks to lure them away. Thankfully, this gas station had some friendly, well-mannered, non-feral zombies. I took full advantage of this, and began to tear open the loot crates, and then I found it. Finding an iron pickaxe at this stage of the game circumvented an enormous amount of progression. It should be known that this was a very low quality pickaxe, and it would not take long before becoming unrepairable garbage. But the main purpose of me even coming out to the desert in the first place was to mine nitrate and lead, so this was the perfect find. This feral zombie thug bothered me a great deal. I fed him electricity and spent an entire bar of stamina playing baseball on his face, which did absolutely nothing to stop him. I did solve the problem, but this encounter showed me that I was not remotely ready to be taking on the feral variety of zombie. This loot crate spat in my face. The reward was less than adequate. I picked at Jim's gun fortress, believing this place was a fortress that held guns. As you might expect, I found absolutely no guns, and no, the pipe shotgun doesn't count. But I did find some shotgun parts, and I'll never complain about that. I would be needing them anyway to make a shotgun. The time was getting close. Nitrate ore is used to make nitrate in the mortar and pestle. Mixing this with charcoal will make a generous amount of gunpowder. Being able to make ammunition would allow me to use ammunition. This is galnia ore, and when you apply fire to it, it smelts into lead. And when you apply dark magic to lead, it transforms into bullet tips. Same as the base game. Mining coal with an iron pickaxe feels luxurious. I was feeling pretty high and mighty, but in this footage I didn't notice that my pickaxe was too low quality to repair it more than once. The game was playing a joke on me, and I was too foolish to know it. I returned home, and I began the process of tearing apart a radiator with my bare hands. I could have just smelted the radiator, and it would have yielded a great deal more brass for me to make bullet casings with. But it takes like 20 minutes to smelt a singular radiator, and I just didn't have the coal for it. Scrapping would be good enough. My new crafting target was the Model 1887 shotgun. I would have gone for the classic pump shotgun, but it is apparently not craftable even though it was listed on the crafting sheet. The old vanilla guns are not craftable, but they can still be found in loot after killing an army of murderous ferals. Despite all my hard work mining in the desert and draining all of my water supply, I found that I was too stupid and too incompetent to create gunpowder. I needed my explosives at level 10 to craft gunpowder. This was a kick to my face. I once again had to reflect painfully on my previous actions. I had scrapped a great deal of explosive magazines. I needed to wait just a little longer on unlocking the next tier of shotgun. In the morning, I returned to the desert to atone for my sins. I found the city and scrambled to find magazines and a crack-a-book. I found that I had a poly-addiction to both alcohol and books. This Mo Power was very generous on the books, and I repaid this generosity by smashing the manager with a baseball bat. Somebody had called the police, and I was now a wanted fugitive. A great number of witnesses arrived to report on my felonious activities. I became my own attorney and represented myself, and I presented the argument that my actions were out of self-defense. This zombie challenged me to a stupid contest and won. The working stiff was not stiff and did not work for me when it failed to give me a tool. A significant portion of the day was spent outside dipping my hand into mailboxes. But I went through the trouble of operating a vehicle after chugging several bottles of Shiraz. It would not have been satisfying at all if all I did was commit small federal crimes in a biome with great looting potential. I took my chance to break and enter into this house with the intention of making a great deal of loud noises. I needed to get a handle on these ferals. They made me feel small and insecure, and I hated them for it. Fighting ferals made me feel like I was using a wooden club all over again. I wasn't doing enough damage to even stagger them. I needed to get wise. I naively thought a spiked trap could even slightly slow down a feral, but I was still chased out of the house. The feral found my behavior reprehensible. I had deeply offended his delicate sensibilities. I barely eked out a victory and proceeded to the loot room. The zombies were generous and offered themselves as target practice. I then found a copious amount of alcohol, and for once, the loot box had adequately compensated me. I had a deep appreciation for shotguns. Not only were they ammo efficient in a mod that's very stingy with its ammo, but my main damage stat was strength. I had gained a healthy amount of strength through clubs, mining, and gathering. The damage of shotgun scales up with strength. It was here that I found Trader Bob's compound, the objectively nicest and greatest trader. He was dead. Deader than dead. His absence was extremely noticeable. This mod is exceptionally cruel. But that didn't stop me from raiding his compound. I feel like I don't need to explain why I made a stop to the strip club. I was simply there for pure and platonic reasons. I platonically shot a biker in the face and felt a deep sadness when it barely scratched him. I couldn't help but wonder why this soldier was at the strip club while he was on duty during the apocalypse, but I didn't care that much because he was a feral and I was extremely gone. After using echolocation to locate the cracker book, I came face to face with the party girl who had manipulated space and time to threaten my existence. My method of shock and awe was proving quite effective against the ferals. It was at least effective at handling one feral and one feral only. I killed the book and looted the dogs, and I made my exit with a treasure trove of literature fragments. Almost all of these fragments would be converted to shotgun adjacent literature. And the key word I used was almost all of them, because I invested a small amount into club magazines. I wanted to craft myself a very special gift. There's a strong bias towards melee in the early game, so it only made complete sense for me to craft a steel club. One might think that I had made rapid progress, and that would be correct. Because the zombies were tanky, they were hitting hard. Afterlife made them numerous, and insane difficulty made me go insane. I needed hard-hitting weapons faster than ever, because ferals were also becoming a fact of life. Thank you all for joining me for this episode. I've definitely enjoyed making them. I've changed up my style lately, and I'm constantly learning new things with video editing. If you enjoyed the video, consider giving it a like and subscribe. I appreciate you all.